Some people dream of writing one book once they are like 50 or something like that. You have finished, I believe, 23 already. How did it all start?
When I was 13, I saw the fountain in the courtyard of our middle school and I was like, that's pretty. Maybe it could be a portal to another world.
Were you as organized since the very beginning when you started writing?
I'm still not a perfect author now. This morning I got a manuscript from my editor and I was like, what the heck did I write?
When you criticized the ways that English is being taught in Taiwan, what were the exact things that you were referring to?
I think the biggest problem here is that we treat English as a tool, a subject, and not as a culture and art.
Yeah, that is absolutely understandable, and I think that also takes the fun of learning and also like puts resistance. Good evening, Hermione.
Good evening, Paulius.
It's a great pleasure to have you today. I've been waiting for this interview for more or less like half a year, but you were quite busy planning things and university and other activities. So thank you for joining in today.
Thanks for being so patient and for waiting for me.
So just before we get into it, I just want to ask you: has the university applications been finished? Everything went through smoothly?
Well, I'm still working on my overseas applications and domestic ones. I've gotten my interviews done. Waiting for results at this moment.
Cool, cool. Well, I hope that everything will get settled pretty soon. And for our listeners, for those who might not yet know who Hermione is, so Hermione Lee is a best-selling Taiwanese author, and she has written her first book. Well, not written, actually published her first book at the age of 16. The name of the book was In the Name of the Otherworld, and I think from what I have seen, it has been her best-selling book. Well, maybe it's because the first one, and it's a great, nice little book from 2021. And she has published this book when she was just 16 years old, and after that, she has published 14 more. That's a staggering amount. I think it's like what, 15 books since 2021. Am I correct on that one?
You are, yes.
Wow, that's a lot of writing and that's a lot of books. So please tell me, as a first question, maybe, how did you manage to write so many books in such a short amount of time? And also, how many hours per night do you sleep?
Um, well, you see, I have so many ideas. They just come like one after another. Believe me, I'm being totally honest here. I have 239 ideas in my backlog. So
Wow.
I write one, and after I'm done with it, I start with the next. And I'm not a vampire, unfortunately, so I get like 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Sorry to disappoint you.
No, that's pretty decent, 6 to 8 hours. But still, like during daytime, you write a lot, I believe. And how many hours per day do you think that you write?
Well, I try to like at least do 3 hours. If it's a good writing day, which means if I'm lucky and the muse is on my side and everything, I try to make it, I don't know, maybe 5 or above 5. When I'm at my grandma's, I could like do uh sometimes 8 hours.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. And mainly, how does your writing process look? Is it just that you sit by the table, you take a pen and paper, or maybe you take the keyboard and you just go? Or maybe you have some kind of preparation, some things that you go through, maybe some kind of a system. Is it more freestyle or is it more controlled? Like, how does the writing process work for you?
I would say it's more controlled. So before I start each book, I would have a chapter planning. I would do that in my notes in my iPad. I would make sure I know, do we know what we're clear with on this? How many chapters, how many words, how many words there are going to be in each chapter? And what's the synopsis of this book? What's the morals? What are the themes? What do you want to tell the readers? What are the messages you want to convey? And let's break each chapter down. Before starting each chapter, okay, let's spend the first 200 words setting the scene. And then maybe we have a little conversation, the next 500 words or something. And then we have them start the adventure in the next 1,000 words, have them fight a monster in the next 500 words. Well, like that. Very organized.
Wow. So, were you as organized since the very beginning when you started writing, or did it come with time once you have written more and more and you saw that, we need to actually put this in order a little bit?
So when I was working on my first book, I was not this organized. I was like, heck yeah, I feel like writing. Let's do it now. Whatever chapter, yeah. I just feel like doing it. Okay, so let's do it. But in my second book, I was more organized. I was like, I have to be clear that I know what I'm doing. I have to be clear that this is not too rushed or too slow. And I'm still not a perfect author now. This morning, I got a manuscript from my editor. And I was like, what the heck did I write? This is a word salad. It's not a novel.
And I know that you have published some of your books yourself, and with other books, you had a publisher. And what about the editing process? Do you also edit some books yourself and send some other manuscripts to the editor? How does that work?
If the book is with the publisher, they will do the editing. And
Right.
if the book is self published, I will do the editing myself. But I'll run it through a beta reader first.
Gotcha. And how does the editing process feel to you? How is the communication with the editor? Because I know that some writers get head to head many times with editors, and they disagree, and they maybe don't want to make some changes, and so on. And for some people, it's super smooth. So how is it for you?
So my editor sends me the edited manuscript via email, and she tracks her changes. I go through what she changed, and I do the accept or decline thing. See if I agree with her changes. We do have some differences regarding how to use commas.
Well, I guess that's also one of the things when you write in English, because in my native language, Lithuanian, we put commas everywhere. Like there are so many commas and there are so many rules regarding commas. And when you write in English, it's just such a relief because you don't have to think like that there should be like at least five commas in a sentence. So, but anyway. And getting into the cover arts of your books, uh, I have also been struck with the cover art ever since you have sent me Helen's story. So I liked how it looked, and
Did I?
it was beautiful. Yeah.
I sent you. Wait, how did I send you that? Via Messenger?
Yeah. I think like maybe
Did
4 or 5 months ago.
What? Really? I have to see this for myself. Did I absolutely forgot.
So the question was, well, actually, maybe it's just to clarify, because I heard with some other conversations that you have had with other people, you have mentioned that you make the cover art yourself as well. So why have you decided to create the cover art yourself? Is it because you have also a specific idea already how you want it to look, and then you fear that maybe an illustrator will not come with this idea? Or is it just because it's faster and more efficient?
So with our publisher, they usually they find well, they used to. Now they're doing AI art. They used to go on Shutterstock and find the photos there and purchase the licensing rights and piece them together, and that becomes a cover. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it too. And I really liked browsing through all those pretty pictures. You see all different kinds of styles: watercolor, oil paintings, or just digital art. So I got into it. I liked sifting through the thousands of pictures and piecing together an artwork that I felt match the mood of my story. So I guess you could say that my publisher inspired me to do the covers myself.
Because you already feel the vibe, so to say, of the book that you will read from the book cover itself. And it feels very dreamy. It feels like oriented into fantasy. And some of the genres that you cover are actually fantasy, horror, paranormal, and romance at parts, and many others. So I feel like the cover arts convey this message clearly. And when you think about the books that you write, for whom do you think those books are written? Is there a specific audience that you have in mind when you write that book? Or is it just you want to express idea and whoever picks up the book, uh, well, that actually comes to chance?
So most of my books are young adult fiction, although I do have a couple of books targeted at adults. I do want to add, however, I don't think that an age classification is necessary when it comes to fiction. Of course, unless there are explicit scenes or instances of profanity.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone can read anything as long as they like it. When I was 16, I read Jodi Picoult. Jodi Picoult, she's an American author. I read her novel 19 Minutes and I loved it very much, although it was mostly considered an adult novel. I think that as human beings, we can relate to anyone with any race, any gender, any ethnicity. So I absolutely don't think that a target audience is needed. Although I have to say, of course, publishers want you to have a target audience so they know who their main audience is. But to me, I think anyone can read anything and they can relate to any character.
Certainly. And how did you get interested in writing in the first place? Because I know that you also have more books written that are not yet published. So, and you're just 19 years old. So, are you already 19, if I'm correct? Yeah.
Yes, yes, I am.
So, some people dream of writing one book once they are like 50 or something like that. You have finished, I believe, 23 already. And so, how did it all start? How did it come to be?
I have to start when I was 10. I was 10 years old when I wanted to write a book. Maybe not a novel, because you see, a novel has to be above 40,000 words. That's the industry standards. But a book. Okay, so I started, but after 2 months, I read it. I was like, gosh, my writing is awful. I'm abandoning this. So that was what I did. And when I was 13, in middle school back then, I saw the fountain in the courtyard of our middle school, and I was like, that's pretty. Maybe it could be a portal to another world. So that was what I did, and this time I finished the novel. I guess I just didn't want to look back on my past and feel like, oh, I could have made better use of the time I had when I was little. And I didn't want to leave any regrets. I didn't want to look back and it's like, it could have been so much more, but it wasn't because I got lazy, because I felt the urge to procrastinate, because I wanted to watch more YouTube videos, do more trashy posts on Facebook. And I was like, no, I want to make good use of my time when I'm still young, when I still have time, when I still have all the energy to do what I like. And that was always my motto, and it still is to this day. Just don't leave any regrets. Don't leave anything blank.
Right. And were there other peers of yours as dedicated to their craft as you were when you were 13? Because when I remember myself being 13, I have no idea. I think I played Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and that's all I cared for. So I wonder, maybe like your surroundings were different. Maybe also kids in Taiwan are a little bit more adult than, let's say, the kids when I was growing up were. So because this is very fascinating and interesting to hear, like these kind of thoughts revolving in the head of a, let's say, 10-year-old or 13-year-old, like. I couldn't imagine those thoughts in my head when I was that age. So, what about your peers? Were they also up to something interesting back then?
Well, I wish I could say yes, and I really don't want to sound like a snob, but unfortunately, no. They were more interested in like who which celebrity is the most handsome, the prettiest, and that. And I just didn't really buy into that kind of pop culture belief stuff, mainstream stuff. I thought it was important to find one's purpose when when I was still little, and that kind of made me an outcast among them, to be honest. They kind of didn't like me very much, bullied me a bit.
And what do you think? Like, how come these ideas and these serious thoughts of, let's say, taking the best out of the time that you have and using it well, how did these really, how to say, grown up thoughts entered into your mind when you were still so young? And was it an influence from the outside, or was it just something that came from the inside? What do you think?
Well, of course, there was a time that I wasn't that wise. When I started this book, I was like, I mean, my first book, I was like, I want to try this just for fun. And when I was like one third through the story, my seventh grade homeroom teacher passed away, and I was like,
Mm,
so death could be anywhere. I mean, we might not have that much time as we think we may have. So maybe I should do something meaningful with my life when I can. I would say
gotcha.
that's one of the biggest. That was one of the. It gave me a big boost. It reminded me that I may not be the same tomorrow and the day after that. So why don't I just seize the day and make good use of it?
So we do have to thank that woman, actually, because she put a long-lasting influence on you without even expecting, actually.
He was a guy. Sorry.
Ah, sorry, I misheard then. Right, right. Sorry for that. And I wonder, after you have released your novels and you have written already, you have a big library of ideas to write for the future as well. Is there a book that you would really like to write, but you haven't yet dared to start writing?
There are a lot of those, trust me. A lot of those that are in my idea in my backlog that I really want to write, but I have not had the courage to start yet. For example, I had a great idea yesterday about Shakespeare time traveling to the present and meeting Jane Austen and Edgar Allan Poe and Virginia Woolf and a couple of famous authors that get transported like to modern times and they have a tea party, talk about differences and their thoughts on literature. But I would have to do a lot
Sweet.
of research on that, wouldn't I? So I was pretty daunted by the idea. But still, it was a nice idea to think about and entertain, so I kept it in my backlog.
So, when do these ideas most of the time come to you? Because I believe that great ideas also come when we're quite relaxed. Maybe we have been focusing on something for quite some time, then we just relax for a walk, go for a walk, or take a shower, and then something pops into our head. So, is it the same for you, or is it just like ongoing 24/7 and you just have to have a pen and paper just to capture them?
Anytime. They just come anytime. Like maybe I'm thinking about the concept of time travel. It was like, what if Shakespeare came to modern times and saw all the fancy technology we have these days? And I get ideas from browsing the pretty pictures on Shutterstock too. So let's assume that I saw a picture of a tree and a lake, and I thought, okay, what if there was a monster living in the lake, and what if there was something in the tree that the monster wanted to get but couldn't get? So you see pictures and random thoughts and just concepts. They just trigger ideas all the time.
That's interesting because the very first guest on the podcast when it started back in March 31st, his name was Christopher Grant, a Canadian author as well. And he actually mentioned the same thing, like that for him, the most important question is what if? And if you just follow with that question, what if this? Well, what if that? And you just carry on the thread, well, you already see a story evolving. And that's one of the most important questions to have in mind when you just to kind of keep the attention and the curiosity. So you reminded me of him, and most likely I'll have to give him a shout out. That actually,
Sure.
Hermione actually has a similar approach in her mind when she's thinking about a story evolving. Well, what if there was a monster? What if that monster, let's say, had some kind of abilities to interact telepathically, and it just kind of gets on with it until a story evolves. So very cool, very cool. And I also have heard you speaking a little bit about how English is being taught in Taiwan, and your English is superb. It's really nice to listen to you speak. But
Thank you.
when I was living, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to visit Taiwan, although I had a possibility to live for a year in Hong Kong when I was an exchange student. So I lived there for 9 months. Then I went to mainland China for 2 or 3 months as well. And as I have mentioned, unfortunately, I didn't go to Taiwan back then. And now I'm really sad because of that, because it was so close. But there were too many things happening, and I hadn't had the chance to visit. So when I lived in Hong Kong, also people spoke English very well, although they felt a little bit timid and they felt a little bit fearful of their English. They felt a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe sometimes a little bit shy. And I was thinking whether this is the result of the culture that they have been brought up in, or was it the result of schools and education and the ways of teaching? So when you criticized the ways that English is being taught in Taiwan, what were the exact things that you were referring to? Things that are not the best for the students and could be better, maybe?
So, English is treated like a subject here, like math, like science, and that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be done so because English is a form of art. I mean, if you teach kids this is grammar, this because it's I, it has to be am and not IR. And I mean, would you learn your mother tongue like that? No way. We did not learn Chinese like this. And it's very excruciating to have to like read that read those grammar textbooks, those they teach you this is the sentence pattern, the correct way to use it. And like Chinese 这是正确的语法. Sorry, that's Chinese. This is the right usage of whatever sentence. That was what I meant. And I just did not like that at all. It was weird. I preferred reading English texts like stories or maybe listening to songs, reading the lyrics, and getting an immersive experience of English. When I read a lot of books, a lot of different stories, I just pick up the sentence structure myself without having to go through the grammar books and read because it is a plural. It should be blah blah blah, whatever.
Mhm.
So, yes, I think the biggest problem here is that we treat English as a tool, a subject, and not as a culture and art.
Gotcha. Well, I guess like the schooling system tries to adapt to like a variety of people, and to kind of from those multiplicities of different approaches. And we'll see, some people are very gifted in mathematics, or let's say in chemistry or other subjects, and some people are maybe not as gifted when it comes to languages and playing with words. I guess like when you take all that into consideration, you try to find like, well, what kind of system of teaching would be best for all of these different kind of people. And of course, what the problem is that probably people who are very gifted in languages are thinking like, what's wrong with that? And people who are less gifted with languages will think like, also, what's wrong with that from another way? so so it's very hard to find, I guess, like the right way of teaching a subject when it comes, to a large classroom and like many students and so on. Maybe that's why I have selected to work as a tutor, and I really love teaching people one on one, because then we can have a conversation, we can just speak, I can notice some things. I can say, well, this is a great way how you have said it, but I would rather say it that way if I was the person saying the sentence, and then we can try to compare those two sentences and see like what feels better and so on. So maybe like when you're working one with one, you have more liberty to actually look at the person, him or herself, and then feel what's needed for him or her. And I think I also heard that you had a plan that maybe you would like to work as a teacher, as an English teacher in the future yourself. And do you still have this in mind that you would like just to try it out? And if you would, uh, how would you do that? Would you work? Would you like to work in a school? Would you like to teach people privately? Maybe also combining it with teaching how to write and so on. So, How does that idea look in your minds?
I'm glad you brought this up. I've always thought of being a professor of English because if you're a elementary school or middle school or high school teacher of English in Taiwan, you have to focus on the curriculum and like getting the tests, making sure that getting the tests right, getting the children's grades. Making their grades good, making sure they pass the tests and everything. However, I have to say that becoming professor comes with its own challenges, like papers, MA thesis, a dissertation. I am in some master's classes now, auditing them, taking them as a homeschooled student. We can go on the details later, but I just don't like the idea of writing a thesis, to be honest, because I'm so used to creative writing. Whenever I see an argumentative writing project, I'm like, oh no. Uh-oh, this is about to spell disaster, I'm sure.
So, in a way, these things seem a little bit daunting, but you still decided to join a university, and as you have mentioned, it's almost at the end of the process. And in what kind of field did you join? Did you also join a program of English literature, or did you join another kind of program in university?
Maybe I should clarify. I'm not a university student right now. I'm high schooled and I'm homeschooled. But as part of my homeschooling curriculum, I go to some universities and I take classes. Sorry, what was
Ah,
your question? Was that a part of your question?
well, okay, okay. I actually misunderstood. I thought you have already
Sorry.
graduated, and I
Oh
thought
no,
that
no,
you
I'm
are
19.
joining university. Okay, okay. Ah, that's interesting because in Lithuania we graduate at around either being 18 or 19. So, at what age do people normally graduate in Taiwan?
You mean from high school?
Yes.
18 or 17? Like 12th grade?
Okay, gotcha. And you also have mentioned that you had both attended formal education at school, going like a regular student to the classroom to sit by the desk and listen to some people speak to you what you have to know and have to do. And then you had another approach, what people call homeschooling, or some people call unschooling, as well, as we talked with our latest guest, Sylvia, because she is well, I wouldn't say she is homeschooling her children. She is just letting her children learn without going to school. But that's another subject, and maybe some viewers will like to listen about that as well. So tell me, why have you decided, or why have your parents decided that maybe it would be better not to go to school and to learn by yourself, right? But maybe with guidance from others, maybe just like following your own interests. Was it because you were so into writing that you thought like, I don't want any of that other stuff. Like, I don't want that to get in the way of what I do, because that's kind of one of the ideas that come to my mind. So, but how was it really?
So, before I go into details, I may have to provide some background information about our schooling system. Everything is determined by grades. I guess that may not be the case in Lithuania or America. There are more. free or more open and more encouraging students to participate in extracurricular activities. But here, everything is about grades and tests. I used to have like 6 tests a semester in ninth grade when I was preparing for the high school entrance exam, like the national high school entrance examination. And that's crazy, you tell me. 6 exams a semester, one exam in like 3 weeks. And
Hmm.
it does not get better in high school. No. In high school, the every subject, I mean, the books are like half my height. Extremely stressful. I was in high school for like, I don't know, 4 weeks. Before I decided I'm leaving for good. Bye bye. And then that's why I got homeschooled because, well, obviously I had my passion and my interest, and it had nothing to do with the traditional curriculum and the importance of focusing on every subject. So you see, my math grades and my science grades weren't that good, and we were kind of like, should we make sure that I had a balanced report card, or should we just go ahead and let me focus on my interests? And I'm grateful my parents chose the latter. I mean, we had a family meeting and everything, so I got to participate. They're very democratic parents. They let me talk. And in the end, they decided, or let's say we decided, that we're better off on our own.
Right. And I guess, like, given the context of Taiwanese culture, most likely this was not a very common situation, so to say. Like, I don't believe that many parents or would agree with your parents, let's say. And did you get any backlash from other people saying like that you have been doing the wrong thing and you should go back to school and so on? Because some people, of course, believe that they know what's best for you instead of you or your family. so, so I just wonder, like, how was it with your other relatives and so on? Did you experience any trouble after leaving school, or actually it was, thank God that that is over, now I can I can focus on what is really important?
Regarding the backlash, it's interesting you brought this up because I don't think anyone would like voice their disapproval outright. It's none of your business, okay? It's me and my family's business. No, I did not receive any outright backlash, but I don't know what they thought deep down. Like, is this kid crazy? She's giving up her education for what, a writing career? And back then, I have to remind you, I have not received any contracts, any recognition, to be honest, for any of my books back then. Um, I got my contract for my first novel after the homeschooling chaos, the deciding
Right.
to get homeschooled chaos.
Right. So of course we can theorize about many other things, like what would have happened if something happens, and so on, whether you would have gotten that contract if you stayed at school. But honestly, we will never know. But I'm very glad that you actually did what you did, and you had this great possibility, and you had more time, because also a firm believer that young people should follow their bliss, so to say. And their bliss can be expressed in many different kind of ways. Just like we could say, on the luck of the draw, your bliss was expressed through writing, and it's continuously going that direction. I guess for some other people, could be it could be expressed in other ways. And if you're boggled down with many different subjects that you have no care for, you might forget what that thing was, and then but you're like 30 years old and you're like confused. You're not sure what you even like and what you want to do, and that's a little bit of a pity, and it's very hard to uncover that what had been lost. So thank God that you didn't lose it, and now you're actually moving in that direction. But also for people who want to learn the language that is being spoken in Taiwan, I don't dare to call it Chinese because I don't know how different it is from Chinese. And for people who know at least something about the history of the 20th century, they would know about the civil war in mainland China between the nationalists and the communists, how, uh, well, again, it depends on the ideas, fortunately or unfortunately. I would rather say unfortunately, the communists have won, and then the nationalists fled to the island of Taiwan, where they settled, and now we have Taiwan. In a way, we can say representing old China, because you also have old traditional characters, whereas the characters in mainland China are simplified also due to fall in literacy during the reign of Mao. So they had to simplify the characters so people could start reading again, which also shows a lot about how things have gone afterwards. Anyways, so I don't know how different the Taiwanese dialects of Mandarin, if I'm correct, is, or is it has it changed so much that we could not even call it a Mandarin dialect? So I'm just bringing an open question to you because I don't have, unfortunately, enough information. How different is Taiwanese, let's say, from Putonghua, spoken in the People Republic of China, or let's say Cantonese, spoken in the Canton region in Hong Kong?
First, I have to applaud you on having such a outstanding and profound knowledge of our relationship with China and the Chinese language. Wow. Yes, wow.
Thank you.
By dialect, do you mean like our mainstream language, what most people say here?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so honestly, I'm not even sure if it should be called Chinese or Mandarin. I can't even tell the difference between the word Chinese and Mandarin. You see, I was writing a novel about a English cram school teacher in Taiwan, and I was like, should I call this thing Chinese or Mandarin or Taiwanese Mandarin or oh whatever?
Hmm.
I mean, there is
Hmm.
no way
Yeah.
to write this without landing me in trouble. Okay, so back
True.
to the topic. I don't sorry, I still don't know what to call it, but you asked whether
Hmm.
it is very different from the Chinese spoken in China. Um, you mentioned a good point about the characters being simplified versus our traditional ones. They're simplified and ours traditional. Um, the language is spoken pretty much the same, except the accents. Like Taiwanese people have their own accents when it comes to Chinese, and Chinese people have their own accent. And interesting fact here, oh, sad a little bit. Well, when I was back in seventh or eighth grade, my classmates bullied me because my accent was very Chinese, mainland Chinese rather than Taiwanese. When I spoke Chinese, my accent was very made me sound like a mainland Chinese.
Hmm. So the main difference, I guess, is in the accents, and I know
Yes.
that in Mandarin spoken in the People Republic of China, I think they have four tones, whereas Cantonese have seven or even nine tones. I don't know, and of course they differ. Like Cantonese and Mandarin, these are like two different things altogether. Like even for from my not very trained ear, I can see that they're like two different languages, so to say. But when we speak about Taiwanese and how the accents differ, do you still also have four accents, like the rising tone, the falling tone? Uh, is it the same, and you just put it on different syllables? So when you pronounce words, it sounds different, or maybe something else happened with the accents altogether.
You are right about the four tones. Something I would like to clarify is that a lot of people seem to think that Taiwanese people speak Cantonese, and no, that is not true. Most of us speak Chinese. And you mentioned Taiwanese too, and that's really good because Taiwanese is Hokkien. They're the same thing. That's the old language that my grandma speaks and a lot of old seniors would speak. There's another language called Hakka, and it's also considered a dialect. old language, but both Hokkien and Hakka came originated from China, as did our Chinese.
Okay, so Hokkien and Hakka,
Sorry
was
to
it
confuse you.
spoken by? No, it's good. I'm very curious. I haven't heard these two words before. So I wonder maybe you know where do these languages come from? Is it from specific ethnicities and maybe regions, or is it maybe native to Taiwan and people who lived in Taiwan like some few centuries ago spoke it like uh, Hokkien and Hakka? Uh, what's the backstory of these two languages, and how different is it from mainstream Putonghua, so to say?
Oh wow, great Chinese there. Actually, both Hokkien and Hakka came from China, as did our Chinese, 普通话, like you said. The difference is that, let's see, more people speak Chinese compared to those two dialects. And as for our native language, it's what the Aborigine, or let's say, what's the other word? Indigenous people, yes, indigenous people speak. The indigenous tongues are native to Taiwan, but like Hokkien, Hakka, Chinese, all came from China.
Okay, and I wonder, like, how many indigenous let's paraphrase that. How many people in Taiwan still speak the indigenous languages of Taiwan? Is there still at least a minority who speak them, or maybe they have actually incorporated and began speaking other languages, and let's say they have lost their own native tongues? So, is there still a group of people that speak other languages than let's say, mainstream Chinese? And if so, were you ever in contact with those people hearing the language? And if you heard that language, how did it sound to your ear? Because I believe it should be quite different.
Oh my gosh, I have like no idea. I know that there are 16 indigenous tribes in Taiwan. However, their language, I mean, their tongues, I mean, their tongues
Mhm.
are like not considered mainstream. I've heard a few of their tongues before. I think it's very cool, very exotic. I guess you could kind of think of them as like, Native Americans and their tongues. I'm not sure. Is that the
Yeah.
same in Lithuania?
Well, for us, it's a little bit different. We have, let's say, mainstream Lithuanian, the standardized version, and then maybe the only language that kind of stands apart is Samogitian, which is the dialect that is being spoken in the east side by the Baltic coast. So Samogitians were a different tribe of people to Lithuanians, because like there were a group of people called the Balts, and there were Baltic tribes. Some of them survived to this day, like Lithuanians, Latvians, and also Samogitians, whereas other tribes have perished or have assimilated and integrated together. So, so like let's say, for example, the Prussians. Um, I think like whenever the Teutonic Order conquered the lands of current day Kaliningrad, and in the 12th, 13th century, the Baltic Prussian language had perished and has been replaced with the Germanic language. And then after the World Wars, well, the Germanic language has perished, and now it's Russian language. So, the region has changed the ethnicities and languages altogether. So, coming back to that question, when it comes to Lithuania, some of the different dialects and the languages spoken by the medieval tribes, like ranging from like ninth to maybe 12th century and so on, have disappeared or assimilated together. Whereas maybe only the Samogitians have maintained a difference in how they speak and even how they write. They have letters that Lithuanians don't have. So that's look more like Latvian letters and so on. But still, we can understand each other when we speak, although it might be a little bit hard to understand one another at times because the pronunciation and some of the words are very different. But we can still, it's still mutually intelligible in some ways. So it has the same roots of being from the same region and, like having shared um conversations in the past, I guess. So yeah, and Taiwan is a very interesting place, and but also it's a hotly disputed place
Oh
because
yeah,
of
sure.
it's one of the hotspots in some way, at least. And I just wanted to ask you, like living in Taiwan and also communicating with the locals around, what is the general mood of life in Taiwan right now? Uh, because when I visited Hong Kong back in 20, I'm sorry, but I think it was 2016, I believe, or 2017, something around those years. Um, I felt the tension in the people of Hong Kong, and they were really searching for their own identity as Hong Kongese, aside from Chinese. They were emphasizing their own identity, their own culture, to show that it's different from mainland China, and we want to continue living how we live now. Although many changes have taken place ever since, and I think the Chinese, the government of the People's Republic of China, decided not to honor the treaty of Hong Kong returning to China in, I believe, 2050, and they just decided to incorporate it back uh, along the lines of treaty with the British earlier. Whereas Hong Kongers, they just said like, screw the treaty, we don't care, we want to live as we do. But and you felt that tension in the air of fear of what is to come, and of course, like being so close and being so small has its own drawbacks. Whereas Taiwan is in a different situation. Taiwan is much farther than Hong Kong is. Taiwan is much different, also in terms of history, although Hong Kong has its own history as well. And also, you know, Taiwan is stronger militarily in many regards than Hong Kong would have been, and it has its own government, whereas Hong Kong politics were still very highly influenced. This was how it was called, uh, one country, two systems. So so
Yes.
so it was like that. For Taiwan, it's a different story altogether. But how do people feel on the daily basis regarding the situation, the geopolitical situation, so to say, that they find themselves in?
To be honest, no, nobody, there's like zero tension here. Nobody seems to be worrying about whether China will attack us or not. So I was kind of like surprised when you mentioned the tension in Hong Kong. So, see, I've been to Hong Kong once, like just for fun traveling. That was like 2010, 2011. And I did not feel that tension back then. So it's surprising that you mentioned that they are so like aware of their identity and they're really scared and all that, because you don't see any of that stuff here. Everyone's like business as usual, every day goes on, like life goes on and all that. I guess I should be happy that things are so smooth right now, but honestly I am not sure how the course of the future will look like. I do know that we have an election, a presidential election next January, and that may like sort of determine China's attitude towards us.
Right. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, you don't live in tension, because that's
No.
a very destructive energy. That's very destructive emotion and feeling to have, because it impairs you in many ways. It impairs your thoughts, it impairs your mood, and so on. So I'm glad that does not exist. And when coming back to what I have said about Hong Kong and the worries that they had, also I cannot speak about the whole of Hong Kong because I was in a university setting. So I was mainly speaking with university students, I was speaking with university staff. So I was surrounded by people of academia. So they expressed this. And because I studied social sciences, naturally we spoke about, well, social sciences. And that's maybe why they were so heavily focused on Hong Kongese identity rather than Chinese identity and so on. So yeah, I guess maybe that's just out of the way to clarify. Well, good, very good. I hope I'll visit Taiwan in the future myself, and if I ever go, I might need some knowledge of Chinese or Taiwanese, or as we said, the difficulty of naming it. So, for a person that would like to learn the language that you speak, uh, first things first, how should one approach learning your language? Maybe you have some clues, because we certainly know that it's not how people should approach learning languages at school. So, if you were to advise someone on learning your native tongue, what do you think? Should a person do?
Regarding native tongue, you mean like Mandarin or like Taiwanese or Hokkien? No, they're the same thing. Hakka.
Well, putting it in other words, the language that you speak yourself.
Okay, for me, okay, I speak Mandarin, aka Chinese, and Hokkien, aka Taiwanese. So, learning if you want to learn Chinese or Mandarin, I of course I suggest reading books. Maybe they could read like translations. Like if today is someone whose mother tongue is English, they could like read a Chinese adaptation of what's a famous classic, A Midsummer's Night Dream, or just anything they like, or maybe a popular novel like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but translated into Chinese, so they would like feel that familiarity of the storyline and the words. Oh, I've seen that in English, so it's this way in Chinese. Okay, got it. I still understand the plot and everything, and it's just like it's been told from new words and another kind of language. But if you want to learn like Taiwanese or Hakka, those are languages that cannot be written unless you spell them out using the A, B, C, the Roman kind of Romanized spelling. So with those kind of languages, you'll have to like talk to people like my grandmother or just anyone's grandmother. Or actually, schools teach those. The school is trying to make those a part of a curriculum. And I had to
Mhm.
take Taiwanese classes as a little kid in elementary school, but when I got to middle school, it did not do that anymore. But I heard that they're trying to revive the thing in middle school now, and I'm glad I'm not in it because they're going to give tests on it. I'm like, oh no, tests are not a good way to help kids learn a new language. I mean, they will learn, but they are not going to like it, which is what I've always said about tests and how I'm so against those things.
Yeah, that is absolutely understandable, and I think that also like takes the fun of learning and also like puts resistance towards it. And I teach students online still. I taught for 2 years in two different schools back in Lithuania. I taught English, and at the same time, I continue teaching online. And I still have to help them to prepare for school. And I see how reluctant they are to actually learn the things that the schooling system requires them to learn. And how to say, it's not fun for them in any kind of way. It's a chore, it's a drag, and it's not something that they would do on their free time. And if you don't study on your free time, if you're not immersed, if you're not engaging with the language, well, you will most likely not learn it on, or not learn it to an extent that you start speaking like a native in the future. But yeah, that's the problem there. So good. And do you have any friends from abroad that have learned either Hakka or Putonghua, and maybe they communicate with you in those languages?
You mean my friends from other countries who are learning Chinese and who communicate with me in Chinese? No. I mean, or
No.
Taiwanese or Hakka? Nope, definitely not.
Okay.
I talk to them in English because it's a good way for me to practice too. And English is like the um official language of the world. That's why I was learning it. I was learning English at a very little age.
Yeah, that's the lingua franca of the day. It was French, there was Latin, and now it's English. Who knows what's it's going to be in the future? But
Yeah,
for
who
now,
knows?
thank God that we know it. and
Yeah, thank God we know it.
and what do you think? Like, let's say from a person that is coming from an Germanic language background, let's say that speaks English or speaks, let's say, German, or maybe one of the Romance languages like Portuguese, let's say, or Italian. What do you think? Like, from if the person only knows this language, their own native language, and let's say English, which one would be harder to learn, Hakka or Putonghua?
Well, resource wise, I mean, like maybe you wouldn't be able to find a lot of resources that will help you learn Hakka, but with Mandarin, like you said, 普通话, as known as Chinese, also known as Chinese, you will find a lot of different maybe teaching sites, YouTube videos, or either books, CDs that teach you how to speak the language correctly. So Hakka would be harder to learn, and Mandarin would be easier to learn.
Right. So it all comes down to the material that exists, like how much you can engage with
Yes.
it, right? Yeah. Well, I see the same problem with Lithuanian, and I see the same problem with my students because I also teach Lithuanian as a foreign language to anyone who wants to learn. And the main problem is that there is not enough material for students to engage with because if you're a native speaker, of course, there are movies, there are podcasts, there are, news articles, go ahead and enjoy. But if you're just a student, well, that's probably not applicable. You need something to read online, like at least like well, I don't believe children books are the best things to learn when you're just beginning because if people think that they're easy, they're not easy, they're hard for a
No, they're
beginner.
not easy.
So I understand this problem, and that's why I think I will create my own contents in the future when it comes to reading and listening for people that want to learn Lithuanian, but just to kind of fill in this hole at least to a small extent. So I believe Hakka is experiencing the same problem of not having enough
Mhm.
content at the
Yes, because you
moment.
can't write it. You can only listen and speak. With that, you can't really like read, like even in our old textbooks, they were like spelled out, and they had Chinese characters and like the Romanized A B C D and the four tones, trying to teach students the correct nuances of the language. And that's kind of weird because there's there's the alphabet for English, French, I guess Lithuanian too, Spanish,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
Chinese, Arabic,
Hmm.
sorry, um, Japanese. They all have their own like language system, like you know what, A B C D E F G, and um how to write the language out, but you can't really write Hakka or Taiwanese.
Understood. And is it because there is no written system and it was a spoken language? It still is a spoken language.
It is.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, that comes with its own problems, because if it's a spoken language, well, wow, that would be tough to learn, but also an interesting challenge, like for people who love languages. So it might be very interesting for some. Well, cool. And leaving languages aside for a little bit, we have spoken quite extensively about like English, Hakka, Mandarin, and so on. And coming back to you as a writer, are you
Oh yes.
working? Are you working on something right now, or maybe on a few different kind of projects at the moment? And if you are, Uh, could you maybe tell us a little bit what they are going to be about without giving away too much?
Sure. So, do you know NaNoWriMo?
NaNoWriMo. No, I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, sorry. It's okay. It's an abbreviation for National Novel Writing Month. So it appears that
Ah,
writers, some writers thought it'd be a good idea to challenge themselves to write a whole novel in November. I'm guessing I don't know the correct reason behind it, but I'm guessing it's because NOVE is the first four letters of November and also the first four letters of novel. So I'm guessing it's
hmm,
maybe like originated from this concept.
gotcha.
Well, anyway, it's a thing online, and people just want to challenge themselves writing a novel in November, and I thought it was pretty cool to do this year. So I have a NaNoWriMo project going on right now. It's called Dancing in the Moonlight, and let me see if I can. I have my iPad beside me. I can show you the cover and the
Cool.
blurb
Please do.
if you're interested. Okay,
Definitely.
let me find them a little bit. You see, I have, by the way, a little ad for myself. I have like 201 covers right now
Oh my, that's going to
in
be
my
a little bit difficult to
gigantic.
find then.
No, it's number 24. It's because it's 20, my 24th novel, work in progress.
Sweet. Oh, that looks very dreamy as well.
Oh, thanks. It's a young
Nice.
adult literary novel, and it's about these two teenagers called Sky and Finn. Um, wait, did I mention? Oh, yeah, they're they've been raised as ballroom dancers, and
Hmm.
they're pretty famous. They took part in a lot of contests before, and Sky, that's the female protagonist, she wants to like discover herself and see if she can make herself popular at school, and she even resorts to like bullying kids and substitute teachers, and at the same time she feels really guilty about herself and kind of veers off track. But in the end, after, well, some drama, she rediscovers herself and starts anew. So it
Sweet.
explores the issues of self-discovery, adolescence, peer pressure, bullying, the the positive stuff at the end.
And what about Finn?
Oh, he is he's always been a good character. He's very supportive of her, although they do get into some quarrels. Although it might be Sky's fault because she's a bit of a pighead.
Well, I'm really fond of the names also because when you say Sky and
Thank you.
Finn, Finn comes, at least for me, in my mind, how at least my mind works, because I do like mythology and I do like symbolism and so on. So Finn relates to water and many different world myths. Let's say the Mesopotamian myths talk about the sky and the heaven and the water. So if you look on a seashore, if you look to a horizon, you see in a certain part the sky and water melts together and like it becomes one in some way. So I do like that you have decided to choose these names for the characters because at least in my mind it evokes this mythological image, and because they are dancers, well, they do unite as one through the dance. At least that's how it appears in my mind. So that's pretty cool. Looking forward until it gets released. And yeah, and so for people who are just getting into your books, where do you think they should start? Should they start at the very start? Well, at the very beginning, reading the first book and then just carrying on through the timeline, or maybe or maybe they can jump in anywhere and then just pick out any book that they like by the cover, by the abbreviation, the blurb, the cover art. So how should they get into your writing?
Since you mentioned the names, maybe I should like quickly elaborate on that. Thank you for being like so observant and interested in my characters' names. I'm really flattered because I really put a lot of effort on naming my characters, making sure that making sure the right name finds the right character. And for Sky and Finn, so I think I stated this in chapter one. I said that dancing was kind of like flying and swimming at the same time. So Sky symbolizes a bird, and Finn symbolizes a fish because
Cool.
birds fly in the sky and fish have fins. That's
Yeah.
the naming. That's a whole naming thing in the book.
Sweet. And it also
Um,
both have three characters, three letters: SKY FIN.
for
So it's also a nice play.
Sky is spelled SKYE and Finn is spelled FINN.
Ah, FINN. Okay, I thought it's
Yes, there are two
only
N's.
one N. Okay, gotcha,
And
gotcha.
Sky's name has a E.
Okay, okay, okay.
SKYE. Yes.
Well, still cool, still cool. For me, it's still good.
Yeah. Awesome. Um you mentioned the order, right? So I have a trilogy called the Otherworld trilogy. That's in the name of the Otherworld, Marvels of the Underworld, and War of the Chaotic Worlds. I guess these three books might be better if they were read in order, like one, two, and three. And
Mhm.
also, I have four companion novels to the series. Those are Helen's Tale, Eric's Tale, Zach's Tale, and Eileen's Tale. And the one my publisher sent me this morning is Zach's Tale, the one that I said looked like a word salad.
Right.
These four may be better if they were like read after the series, but I guess it's up to the readers how they want to read it, how they want to arrange the reading sequence.
And the other books, I believe, are standalone books, so you can just pick up, and they are not related. So we can just select, let's say, Where the Magic Lies, which I believe you have mentioned somewhere is your favorite book. Maybe it has changed, but maybe not.
So Where the Magic Lies has a sequel release. It's called Where the Darkness Lies, and I would say Where the Magic Lies. It got the most awards, but it's not my personally favorite book. My personally favorite book is not published yet.
So it's yet to come.
It's yet to come. I'm still trying to find a home for it.
And which of the books did you enjoy writing the most from those that have already been released? Which of them were the process was the most enjoyable, and of which the book the process was the most difficult for you to write personally?
I would say Marvels of the Underworld is the most enjoyable, the one that I had most fun when writing. Mostly it's because that I left school back then, and like the contrast of being stuck in school and the freedom of leaving the school like a bird or a fish, like I said before, it was amazing. Like I was out of that cage. I was like totally flying and swimming at the same time, kind of like dancing, to be honest. So I had a lot of fun writing that book, and it's not only because I was in a great mood when writing it. I liked the scenes a lot. There was a haunted
Hmm.
house scene, and there was a scene with like a forest with trees with red leaves and a magical mountain, and well, pretty much everything cool happens in that book, including a water wheel that turns itself into a Ferris wheel and a giant jungle thingy that you have to swing the vines across the little valleys.
Sweet.
Anyway, it's a really cool one.
And
And the
what
most
about the most
difficult
tough one?
one.
Uh-huh.
Diffi- Difficult one, you mean?
Yes, the most, um, at least the one that the process of writing for you was the most difficult or the hardest. Like to
Let's
finish
see.
to finish the novel, and maybe editing wise, and it was just hard work to get it to the very end.
Okay, I would say Within the Walls, because I was in a bad mood back then. I just found I lost a contest. And I was really depressed. But even despite my depression, I knew I had to pull it back together. I had to get that book done. So it was really like all all work and no fun. But still, I enjoyed editing it. It had a nice story. It was interesting. Another book that was difficult to write was War of the Chaotic Worlds. Thanks to COVID, I was stuck at home for like 2 months, and was only allowed to go out to buy stuff with my mom because we were all pretty scared that the virus would catch on with us. And let me just tell you, it's not fun to stay at home and have to remind yourself, I have a book to write. So that one, although it was also packed with adventure and fun, I did not like that. I did not like writing that one.
Gotcha. Well, it most of the time deals with, I guess, connects with the circumstances that you find yourself in,
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
and it's interesting when you're thinking about the marvels of of the other world. Um, and you said you have started writing that book when you left high school, so it seems like you actually have gone through the fountain that was on the cover art and that you have mentioned when it comes to your first book, and you have actually entered the other world through leaving high school, and then you got into writing your book Marvels of the Other World. So it's a nice how to say. It seems like you used your own symbolism there, so you kind of
Yeah,
became the protagonist of your own stories.
I always make sure I find bits of myself in the protagonist I create.
What about the antagonists and the other supportive characters? Do you also have maybe are they influenced by the people that you know, or maybe people that you read about, or they're just like someone who comes to your mind as a character form in your imagination?
So when I was starting out with In the Name of the Otherworld and my first few books, let's say, I would try to like derive inspiration from the people around me, base a character on someone, but in the end there were just too many books and I didn't have that many acquaintances. So I just made it up by myself and I began to see protagonists not as like Hermione duplicates, but rather as
Hmm.
their own individuals, maybe like clients I want to work with. Okay, so what's this client like? What's
Hmm.
he or she? What's their personality? What would they do if they ran into some big? What would they do? If they got in some trouble, and what would they do in this scenario? So I began to like start to empathize with different, okay, fictional characters, but still I would like put myself in their shoes and not impose my thoughts on them. And you
Gotcha.
mentioned the antagonist, and that's very fun because I do have a novel. Once Upon a Time in is that no, it's not beside me. It's over there. Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. That was my 15th written novel. The protagonist becomes the antagonist in the end, and this should not come as a secret, so it's not a spoiler. Don't worry. It was based on the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. She
Hmm.
is a total nut. In the novel Alice in Wonderland, she's like off with her heads and everything. So I want to explain like how she became from a normal person to a lunatic.
Wow. So for the fans of Alice in Wonderworld, I guess this is a very good book to read. It's not a direct, prequel of the story, but
It
it's your
is.
take on it.
It's kind of a prequel. Yeah, the Queen of Hearts and her backstory. One of my friends, a very good beta reader, said she thought that was the best book I'd ever written.
Cool. So maybe for some people that would like to get into it, that could be the first standalone book that they could get their hands on. So that's
Yes,
also a good way in. Cool. And when you think about your future, well, it's very hard to think about tomorrow, let alone like a month or a year or 5 years after that. But still,
I'm
like,
already think. Sorry.
no, no worries.
Oh,
I just wanted to know. Yeah,
mhm.
I just wanted to know, do you have some plans or maybe some dreams that you would like to take place in the future? Or maybe you just go to it day by day and just trying to finish the stories that you want to tell. And that's how your fantasy actually gets into reality.
Well, I'm thinking about tomorrow already. When I have a plan for my new novel, I would just make deadlines for myself. I have to finish which chapter on what day, what chapter on what day and when I finish the whole book. So I am already thinking about tomorrow. And for the rest of my life or my future, I do have my plans. Well, one, I hope to get an agent, maybe, hopefully. It's very hard to get an agent these days. And I would really like to get book reviews from School Library Journal, Book List, Publishers Weekly, and those big names. Um, it would also be a great dream come true if one of my books made the New York Times bestselling list.
Hmm.
Although I know there has
Oh,
been some controversy about that list. I mean, it's still an honor because a lot of people here, okay, maybe not only here, like maybe some teachers, or no offense to anyone, or parents just want to see a book with a lot of honors, and not and just because a book has received a lot of honors and good reviews, they would just think that it's a good book, and they would just buy it without even reading the blurb or anything, which is what I believe is called reputation precedes everything. That's why
mhm.
I work really hard to build on my reputation and get awards and good reviews. So yeah, that's also the reason why I would really hope to get on the New York Times bestselling list despite knowing how controversial it can be. There's this author called James Patterson, I think, who wrote an
Mhm.
article about how the list was, well, you can go on internet and look at the details, but anyway, there has been some controversy surrounding it. And of course, the less controversial stuff, I would really like to have a book on the American Library Association notable books list.
So these are like the landmarks that you would like to like, or the checks that you would like to put on some to-do list, so to say. And for people who would like to contact you, maybe also for a review or maybe for other kind of reasons, um, how can they reach you? Where can they find you? And also, where can they find your books?
Well, I have my author Hermione Lee Facebook page. You just type author Hermione Lee, my name, and you'll see me. Or you can just write to me via email, which is authorhermionelee@gmail.com. All of my books are can be found on Amazon, and a couple of them on other sites like uh what's that called? Barnes and Noble
Cool, cool. And maybe the
or
last
Google
question for
Books.
today. And maybe the last question for today. Uh,
Mhm.
let's say you're speaking to a beginner writer. I don't want to say young writer because beginners can be young people, they can be adults, or you know, even someone in their 70s. But for a person that just starting to write, what kind of advice could you give that person, knowing what you have gone through and what you are still going through? And when you look back, even to yourself in the beginning, what kind of advice would you give that imaginary person?
I would give them a quote that, sorry, I stole, or maybe I didn't steal, I found it on the internet. It's called,
Yeah,
doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. So first, just put your doubts away, lock your mind up, go and write whatever story that your great brain has conjured for you. Just go and do it. Don't think about, oh, but what if someone doesn't like it? What if it's not publishable? What if I'll never find a publisher? I mean, those um unfortunate things may happen, but you won't even get a manuscript if you keep doubting yourself like that. You'll put off your dream forever, and one day you're gonna look back on your young and doubt, maybe not young, on your very insecure self, and you're going to really regret not trying, not at least finishing your manuscript, which is what what happens to me when I look back on my 10-year-old self. I was like, why didn't I at least write the story? Why didn't I finish the story? I mean, why did I just leave it hanging there? Well, the good news is that I rewrote the 2,000 word manuscript when like last year, and it became a book called Heart of the Forest. So,
sweet,
well, that's what I did for my 10-year-old self. But anyway,
nice.
back to the topic. Just don't doubt yourself. one day you're going to regret doubting yourself and letting your insecurities win. Like, don't let that happen.
Awesome. Awesome. Those are very good and inspiring words, I guess, for anyone to hear, whether they're planning to write a book
Thanks.
or do anything else, to be honest. This works for any other endeavor. Is that doubt skill more terms than, and I will have to
Failure.
re-listen. Yeah,
Than failure ever will.
perfect. Very done. Very well done. So, Hermione, it was very lovely to talk with you and also explore many
Thank you so
topics
much.
relating, yeah, and explore the topics relating to writing, to learning English, to learning Hakka or Mandarin. So I believe people who like languages and like writing and like reading everyone will find something in this interview that will be just specific for them. And would you have anything else to leave the listeners with? Maybe an idea, a note, anything else that you would like to say, but you didn't have a chance to say during the interview?
Wow. That might be the hardest question of all. I mean, I have a few thoughts, but none of them are coming to me right now. um Read my books and please leave a review. That's the only two
That's the
things I
best
can
thing.
that only two things I can think about right now, to be honest.
Well, no worries. I guess that's the best things that you can actually ask for because, like, as a podcaster, I know how important reviews and listens are. So, for any
Yeah.
person, any creative person who creates any type of content, those are the things that keeps us going and keeps us motivating and pushing us forward to create more and just to give more at the same time. So yeah, okay,
Yes,
very good.
reads and listens are very important, but even if one day nobody wants to read my books anymore, I will still be writing them. Because I didn't do it for money or for my readers. I didn't write for anyone. I wrote for myself. So even if I get zero reviews and zero people buy it, it's it's zero people or zero, yeah, zero people buy it,
There are
I will
people, I
still be
think. Yeah.
writing. Yes. I will still be writing because I knew that I did this for myself from the start and I'll keep doing it for myself.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like,
this is another good advice
mhm.
for the beginner writers. Just do it for yourself. You can listen to other people's advice, but you don't have to take them. You're not obligated to take anyone's advice because it's your life and it's your book and it's your journey.
Yeah, I do believe that too because, if it's like how life is getting expressed through you, you cannot just ignore it or stop it. It's just like what life wants to do. And if it
Mhm.
takes you as a person and encourages you to write, well, you should go with that. That's where you will probably find the most joy and the most meaning in life. For other people, it
Yes,
might
it
be
is.
like for Sky and Finn, it might be dancing. For other people, it
Mhm.
might be something else altogether. So I'm glad that you have this internal fortitude and understanding that it's not only based on external feedback, but also just basically on internal motivation and like what's burning inside of you and what wants to be expressed. So I'm glad that you find that much joy in that, and I hope that
Thank you.
the readers will find the joy reading your stories. And
Thank you.
I will not say goodbye, but I'll say until next time, because I believe
Until
that we
next
will
time.
have a round two someday in the future. Because like a
Oh,
few years in the
thanks.
future, definitely you'll have something new out there, and you will have changed as a person as well. So, and I will be changed as a also as an interviewer, as a person. So it will be like two new people having a new conversation. So I'm waiting for that to happen in the future.
That's a beautiful conclusion.
Yeah. So thanks for joining in today, Hermione.
Thank you.
I wish you the best
Oh,
of luck.
sorry. I have to have this book beside me. I have to show it to the audience. Yay! Hello.
Sure.
Yay!
So this is the first one.
Sorry.
This is the first one that was ever written,
Yep.
wasn't it?
Yep. And this is the companion novel for that one.
Eric's Tale. Sweet.
Yeah, I should have shown it earlier. Sorry, I just noticed they're sitting beside me.
No worries. Well, that will be like your books waving everyone goodbye, and also to someone hello.
Yes, like that.
Cool. Well, in that case, thanks for joining in, and
Thank you.
until next time.